Welcome into another edition of the 5 Reasons Podcast. My name is Chris Wittyngham, joined as always by Ethan Skolnick. You can find everything that we're doing in the 5 Reasons Sports Network in our new website, 5reasonsports.com. You can check out all of our podcasts, all of our written content, and how you can contribute to anything it is that we are doing here in the 5 Reasons Sports Network. But today, we want to talk some NBA. We're joined by Marc Stein, NBA insider for the New York Times. He's kind of take some time during this very busy NBA playoff period. Marc, how you doing, sir?
Guys, I'm good. All good.
We kind of want to sort of obviously go through these playoffs and what's been going on so far in round one, but a little bit through the prism of, I think, what a lot of people view this stuff through, which is what's going to happen in future. Sometimes it's not always about the basketball, it's about what happens after that. I want to start first. The team that I find most interesting right now is the Los Angeles Clippers, obviously having pulled off that remarkable comeback, coming back from 31 points down. I actually just watched it because I fell asleep that night, and I hadn't had the chance to watch the full-length highlight of it. But in terms of the Clippers and what they are in terms of a building organization that kind of knows what they're doing now, how attractive are they to potential future free agents and specifically to Kawhi Leonard?
Well, look, I mean, the chatter has been so steady about the Clippers being in the driver's seat for Kawhi. That's months old. I don't quite believe that Kawhi, on his off time from the Toronto Raptors' own playoff run, that he's sitting there watching Clipper games and saying, yes, this makes them more attractive. I know that's kind of a popular theory, but I mean, even beyond, without what they're doing against the Warriors right now, I mean, they've made themselves an attractive destination, and they've, with some really smart contract decisions. I mean, they've got pieces on, they've got all these players with favorable deals, and so they can make trades. They can keep the guys they have. They can try to package guys to get another superstar. If they can get Kawhi in free agency. I mean, I wrote this the other day. They're never, ever, 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 ever going to overtake the Lakers in LA. I mean, I'm in LA right now, and this will always be Lakerland, but they're closing the gap as uncomfortably as it's ever been closed. And, Ballmer is relentless. He's assembled a superstar front office, and they are really, really moving in the right direction. And again, until the contract is signed, we're going to have to wait and see. But it's been months now that either when I'm around the Clippers or people just talking about it, I think if you polled NBA GMs, they would tell you they expect Kawhi to end up with the Clippers.
I think first, before we refer to Marc Stein any other way, are you going around introducing yourself as Hall of Famer Marc Stein now? Is that how does that work? Do you just
Absolutely not. It's absolutely not. But if you want to bring it up, I certainly will not stop you. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It feels amazing. I still don't believe it. Still can't explain it. But I do love hearing it.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I know, no doubt. I was in Charlotte for it, and seeing the look on your face there, I think is an expression that everybody in this business at one point or another would love to have, but never thinks it's actually possible. Getting back to the Clippers here for a second, is it possible for them to pull off a double, Mark? I mean, can they create an attractive enough situation? Because like you said, it is an all-star front office. There's no question about that.
They think so. They think so.
Okay.
Now, that was my first beat, and I covered the Clippers when things were really, really, really bad. And so I guess there is still that kind of skeptic within me that, I'll believe it when I see it. Let's see them get Kawhi first. People kind of treat that as it's a done deal. It hasn't happened yet. Let's see. I want to see Kawhi materialize first, but the Clippers absolutely think that they can get 2 A-listers in free agency. Again, I'm not ready to go there, but they think so.
I want to move to the East now with Boston. And what they've been doing so far in these early stages, having, I would say, a more solid playoff series than a lot of teams expected. But I would say right now, of the teams in the NBA, they're right now in among the more volatile positions. Obviously, they have this young group of players that's waiting in the wings should Kyrie Irving depart. But Kyrie Irving scored 37 for them last night en route to a victory. And the feeling kind of is that when they come up against Milwaukee, that it could be pain for them. Where do you stand right now with Boston and where they are just in terms of Danny Ainge has been waiting to really go all in. He obviously goes all in on Kyrie Irving, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the move that's going to be his franchise changer. Obviously, he wants to go on all in for Anthony Davis at some point, but where is Boston going in terms of finally cashing in everything that they've built up for all these years?
Well, I would just say this. rest assured that Danny Ainge has a plan, and we probably just don't know about it yet. I mean, he's uber well prepared, and really that is another front office that's just minimum you put them top five, and I don't know if you can separate if you can really rank the top five, but I mean they're in a very enviable position with the the roster that they have and the option they have. I mean, I'm not disputing it. I mean, it is a very tough position because Kyrie kind of holds the cards and he can just go. And again, depending on how much you want to buy into the chatter around the league, the belief is that he and Kevin Durant want to do something together, whether that's go to the Knicks, whether that's go to the Nets. Are they going to end up going somewhere together? We're going to have to wait for that answer. Nobody wants to wait, but I mean, obviously that chatter has been out there for a while. So the Celtics don't hold all their own cards, or so it seems. But because of the roster that they have, I always bet on Ainge. I just have a feeling that no matter what happens, no matter what curveball is thrown at them, they're going to react well. I mean, obviously this team in the regular season underachieved in a huge way. I mean, with the kind of team they had, there's no way they should have only won 49 games. But the playoff run will also, I'm sure, factor into how things end there. I mean, if they lose early, that's you have to think that's going to be a factor in how this all shakes out. I mean, and in round one, it's just nothing we can really answer at this point yet. But I'm not too worried about the Boston Celtics. I just think Ainge is going to make the right choices no matter what the variables are.
I think the other team that we consider really volatile in the Eastern Conference is Philadelphia, because I still don't think Milwaukee's maybe getting the respect that maybe they've deserved. And then, as you mentioned, Toronto, the Kawhi situation kind of hangs over them. But with Philadelphia right now, do you see any scenario where all four are back next year? Are they going to bring Harrison Butler back, or do you see maybe Jimmy moving on somewhere else?
The Sixers keep talking like they're bringing all four back, and I would say around the league, no one is buying what they're saying. That there's just the skepticism is robust, to say the least, that people think at least Jimmy Butler moves on, or that they just can't afford to keep all four. And let's face it, so far as the foursome, it hasn't meshed. The question is, have they had enough time to really make it mesh? I wrote the number at the time, and I don't remember it exactly. It was 25, 28, 23, some number in the 20s was all the games they had left when they got Harris to kind of finish the season. And then Embiid's been hurt, so they haven't had a clear run at it, but it does look bumpy. I think there's no question Brett Brown is under huge pressure. If they don't get out of this series, obviously he's going to be the scapegoat, and that might even be the case in the next round. So, no question there is a lot of pressure and a lot of uncertainty in Philadelphia. But, all I can say is the Sixers themselves at this point insist that they are committed to keeping all four, which is going to be damn expensive.
We'll get back to today's episode in a second, but first I want to tell you about one of our new sponsors here in the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that is the attorneys at Seltzer Mayberg. Find them at onecalllegal.com. That's O-N-E, calllegal.com, or actually call 855 5000 Law LAW. They handle cases including but not limited to car accidents, slip and falls, and any personal injury matters. Additionally, if you mention 5 Reasons, they will handle your traffic ticket for $44.99 with a new 15,000 square foot office opening on I-95 in North Miami. They will handle cases all over South Florida. Call now with 24/7 service for a free consultation. OneCallLegal.com or 855-5000 Law. The attorneys at Seltzer Mayberg, a proud sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. What is the market for Jimmy Butler right now? Because I think Miami fans at the beginning of the year were looking at that potential trade with Minnesota as Jimmy Butler would signal something important for the Miami Heat to try and bring him in. And, I mean, if you want to shed any light on those trade negotiations, feel free, because that's still a bit murky in terms of why that didn't get done. But also, just in general, where does the league stand on Jimmy Butler now, given the Tom Thibodeau miles, given his off-court issues with, getting along with teammates? What would you say he's looking at going into free agency?
I think he's going to do fine in free agency because he is, as you saw in game one, he's obviously a difference maker, great player. Maybe there are some people who feel like he can't fit into a team structure, but I'm certainly not one of them. I was initially, I thought it was, I was sad that the Heat couldn't complete that deal because I just thought Butler and the Heat would be a great cultural match. And, I just think Butler is a Spoelstra Riley kind of player. And I think ultimately the Heat decided that the price was just too steep because it was going to cost Richardson and a first at the minimum. And given all of the cap issues that the Heat already have, they decided, look, do we want to trade for this guy and then pay him a 5-year max? And we already have no flexibility. Can we put a team around this guy? And they clearly decided no. I think the Heat are fortunate that the Wolves, if that's the position they took, the Heat are fortunate that the Wolves twice balked at this thing because it was on the table and the Heat made it available. And basically it was the Wolves, to my understanding, who passed. And basically the offer was there and they didn't take it twice, to my knowledge. So, when the Wolves finally got to the point that they were ready to trade Jimmy Butler and went back to Miami, as I understood it, then the offer was no longer available to them. I think the Heat decided, this isn't the right move for us. So I think it was a huge mistake on Minnesota's part. I did not like the trade they ended up making for Butler at all. They didn't get a future first. Saric and Covington, I guess theoretically, can fit well next to Towns, but Covington's been hurt since they got him. Saric woefully underperformed. So I think the Heat were fortunate the way it turned out, even though, like I said, just not thinking about the cap, I would have loved to have seen Jimmy Butler in Miami. I think you would have seen his best playing for the Heat. But Ethan and I actually sat together at a game late in March when I was there, and he kind of convinced me that it probably wasn't the right move because of all the financial limitations. But I said, if you could throw all that out, I would have loved to have seen Butler in Miami.
You're the first person I've convinced about anything. So what is the route out then, Mark? Because I went to Pat Riley's presser. The only thing I really asked him was about Los Angeles because that was sitting out there. So I was trying to Nick Saban him and get him to say something that, maybe he goes back against later, but he did say he's absolutely here for the long run. It sounds like it's going to be a long run. He doesn't seem like he's going anywhere. But I thought it was an odd press conference. Pat usually comes in with a little bit more of an agenda, and I felt like this was kind of all over the place. Basically, the message was, stop questioning me because I've done this before, and we'll do it again. But even with conversations I've had with people inside the organization since, I can see more of a route out because some of these contracts are expiring, but it's not plainly obvious to me. Like, how did the Heat, I guess two things on this. A, how did the Heat become the Heat again? And second, one of the things Brian Windhorst has said and others have said is that if the Heat had money this summer, there would be players who want to play there, but they can't. Is that something similar to what you've heard?
Yeah, I still think they're a destination, and I am still scarred by '06 when I questioned Riley in print week after week after week and did not believe in that roster construction at all. Can't forget how throughout the regular season that team, they lost every single game against any decent team and then put it all together in the playoffs, and he won his championship. And I guess I've been scared to question the man ever since, even though now we're basically talking 15 years later. I love hearing Pat speak. I mostly grew up in Southern California, so as a kid, all of his Laker coaching glory when I was a kid, watching that pretty closely. So he doesn't grace us with his presence often in front of the microphone, and I watched it. I watched the stream because I wanted to hear what he had to say. And look, he has earned the benefit of the doubt, and that front office has earned the benefit of the doubt. We know Andy Ellisberg is a cap maestro, and they always find a way. Just even the Tyler Johnson trade was a reminder that they can move contracts that seem untradeable. But your underlying point is right. This is the summer you needed cap room. Even if they can manufacture it next summer's the 2020 free agent class is nowhere near what this one is going to be. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know the path that they are going to forge to get out of where they're going to get out of. But some of the players they have there have kind of outperformed expectations already. So, they do have, some complementary pieces that have potential, but how they're going to get that star to kind of start over again, I can't sit here and tell you that I see it either.
And to me, the confusing part, I think the confusing part to a lot of Heat fans is that they've chosen a path that I would say a lot of teams, like for example, when you hear that Detroit just wants to make the playoffs, right, and they'll do everything that they can just to make the playoffs because that is a minimum goal for them, that feels like the kind of roster that Miami has put together. So now that they're trying to seek their way out of it, I think one of the difficult things that they've encountered is that there was sort of a thought maybe in 2016 when the salary cap exploded that there's this unlimited fountain of money that could eventually solve your problems and a limited fountain of salary cap space. How have you found that the league has changed in the 3 years since that original cap spike when there was a thinking that contracts that are at this value are going to be worth that much more, and there's been, for me, a little bit more of a regression to the mean in terms of what teams are actually valuing players at now?
Well, look, that summer changed the thinking for everybody. There were so many quote mistake contracts that teams are trying to be as judicious as they can, and I'm sure the Heat, if they were hooked up to some lie detectors, would tell you that they handed out some deals that they wish they didn't, because it was of their own doing, and they put themselves in the contractual bind that they did. But it's also, cities are different too. In Detroit, just getting to the playoffs, you can probably sell that. In New Orleans, after they trade Anthony Davis, which I guess they're saying now that maybe they might not trade Anthony Davis, but David Griffin's going to make a run at trying to convince him to stay. But let's assume they go ahead and trade Anthony Davis. I don't know that the fans there are going to be demanding a championship. If they can just get back to competitive, that might work in a market like that. But, Miami is obviously not going to just settle for making the playoffs. I mean, that's never going to be enough in Miami. So that adds to the complexity of it.
As you mentioned, you're a Southern California kid, although I know obviously a lot of what you've covered has been in Dallas. Did LeBron make a mistake
for his quote legacy / resume? I mean, I don't think the Lakers was the right choice, and I that's another one where I feel like I said it at the time, so I can say it again now. And you've covered him from very close quarters, and I'm sure you had this same thought. He can, he said, "I know what I'm getting myself into." He can talk about patience. We know that once the losses start mounting, he's not going to be patient. It's just not his personality to roll with it. And so, if they have another, if they can't find a superstar sidekick this summer, if they have another poor or even middling season next season, when, maybe they're a 4, 5, 6 seed, but not really a title contender, I think it's going to drive him nuts. One of my biggest questions this playoff, which I don't think we'll probably get a great answer, because I know he's been tweeting more than maybe we expected, but I don't know that we're going to get a real glimpse of what he's up to. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But how is he coping with not being in the playoffs? I think it would make him miserable to basically spend the next 2 months watching all these other teams chase the championship. My guess is that it's going to, by the time June comes and he realizes how far away he is from title contention, that's going to bother him and eat him up. But, the Lakers are an undeniable mess, and, I don't, it's really hard to see them getting back to championship contention next season. So, that's now we're talking halfway through this contract and no title. And I never believed that he's just, a lot of people said by him going to LA, he's basically telling us he feels his legacy is untouchable and doesn't really care what we say, and doesn't really care when we, when as pundits, we throw his finals record in his face. And maybe his legacy is beyond reproach at this point, but just as a competitor and knowing how much he loves to be in the finals and have a crack at this, I just don't buy that he's going to be fine with missing the playoffs or a second round exit. Like, I think that's, it's not just an annoyance. It's a problem that it's going to be hard for him to deal with.
We'll get back to our episode here in a second, but first I want to tell you about a great new sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that is ShipYourCarNow.com. These guys can move any car, boat, RV, motorcycle, or equipment anywhere you need worldwide. You have a business and need to ship freight or machinery? Call them. College moves, new car, used car, buying the toy you've looked at for a while? Call them. These guys can ship it all, so give them a call. Here's the number, 1-800-264-4644. That's 1-800-264-4644, or visit shipyourcarnow.com /5 reasons. Also make sure to mention 5 reasons on the phone. I wish they'd had this when I was going to college. This would have been great for me. I needed to get my car down from Baltimore to Florida. I ended up taking the auto train. You don't want to take the auto train. Ship your car, fly. No job too big or too small. Ship your car now. Moves it all.
First thing, you were also right about the '06 Heat, by the way, because I kept writing the column that Riley made terrible trades and then they won a championship. So you were not alone on that one. But you're also completely correct about LeBron, because it may not matter to the people around him, right? Like, it may not matter as much to Maverick or Rich or some of the others who are around him because they're in LA and they're building his brand, but it absolutely matters to him. The legacy thing, like, to me, that's been sort of the biggest white lie he's told during his career. I mean, the one example I always go back to, Mark, is I did a big sit down with him for about 20 minutes for Bleacher Report before his 30th birthday. And he answered every question I asked, I thought, relatively truthfully. Some of it was a little more polished than I was hoping for, but relatively truthfully. I asked him if he cared about being the greatest player of all time, and he gave me this BS answer, okay? And I wrote the piece, and it was ready to go, and it was that night, and I just walked up to him in the locker room. Cleveland pounded somebody that night, and I said, do you have anything else from what we talked about the other day that you want to expand upon? And he goes, yeah. The answer about me wanting to be the greatest basketball player ever changed that. I do. And it was like, he'd been thinking about it. We did the interview like 4 days earlier, and he'd been thinking about it. So I just think that's been the one thing he's been kind of, and understandably disingenuous about, because I think sometimes, he's kind of pulled into talking about that when he doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to offend anybody else, but then he has an inner arrogance, which has served him very well. So it comes out. I think I agree with you. I thought he wasn't going to tweet at all during the playoffs and just totally shut it down. I think it's going to drive him absolutely insane. I guess my only follow on this, and then Chris will jump in here, where should he have gone? Because I said Philadelphia at the time. To me, that made the most sense. Is that where you thought would be the best option for him?
Look, if he really, like, everyone thinks he just came here to build his brand and make movies. I don't know that I really believe that either, because I think he could build his brand and do movies wherever he lives. I mean, he spent his summers in LA anyway. So I tend to believe more that he came to LA really because this is just where he wanted to be with his family. This is where they wanted to live. And, if that's the reason, that's admirable. That's a great, that he put his family first and, put their happiness as a unit first. I applaud him for that. But yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, I think it's really gonna eat him up to, the basketball part of it is gonna be harder for him to digest than even he thought. As far as where he could have gone, I mean, I think if he, I don't know, it's just so, you said Philly, and just my instant reaction was, you know what, he probably would have been killed for doing that too, because people would have just said, you're just chasing rings by trying to go with better players. Like, whatever he would have decided, he would have been roasted for it, because that's just kind of the, the position that he's in. So, I mean, Philly, any team you would have chosen with good players, I'm sure it would have been a good situation, because obviously he's so good. But I just think he underestimated the steep climb. He underestimated how far away the Lakers really were, and now they're crazily enough even farther away.
I want to get back to something you said earlier on, which was related to Kevin Durant and some of the chatter that you'd heard that maybe he was maybe thinking about teaming up with Kyrie Irving somewhere. Would you say right now that the more likely scenario would be that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving go play somewhere together, or that Kevin Durant ends up in New York?
Well, again, it's one of those things where you can't ignore the smoke, and I'm hesitant to talk about it just because Durant has pushed back so hard, and he's right. We're all reacting to what other people are saying. There really haven't, Durant himself has not dropped any hint that he's leaving, but yet again, if you poll general managers around the league, I think they would overwhelmingly say he is leaving, and overwhelmingly say he's going to go to the Knicks. And based on what the Knicks did at the trade deadline, the consensus reaction to that was there's no way the Knicks trade Porzingis in the manner that they did without knowing something, without knowing that they're getting Durant and Kyrie, or they know they're getting at least one certifiable franchise player. But I also would say that there's, at least me, just speaking purely for myself, there's always been a part of me that thought the Warriors could still save this if they win again, and, let's see where his head's at the end of another successful playoff run, because if the Warriors do win again, he's now won 3 in a row. They have a shot at 4 in a row, which no one's ever, no one in the modern game has done. Will things change? But again, when just talking about changing his mind, I'm acting like I know what's in his head, and I don't. I mean, I don't think the Warriors exactly know, but I do think it's fair to say, the Warriors have been bracing for the worst all season. I don't think they feel like it's a done deal completely, but I mean, they've been living this all year long. And it's one of the reasons they seem so mentally tired.
Last one for me here, Mark, and I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot because I know you were in Miami, like you said, and you saw the Mavs down here. Who made a bigger impact on basketball, Dirk Nowitzki or Dwayne Wade?
I mean, I don't think you guys are going to be hugely surprised at my answer, but, obviously I covered Dirk Nowitzki, as close as I've ever covered anyone, but I think I can also say this as objectively as possible, which I'm sure no one in Miami thinks I can be objective on this topic, but Dirk literally changed his position, and that's something where, no slight to Dwayne, because, Dwayne was so good that I think if you did a ranking of 2 guards, I mean, he's what is he, 3-4 all time? I mean, he's way up there. So, I mean, his career was, spectacular. But to me, look, in spending the last 20 odd years in Texas, I covered the Mavs at close range. I covered the Spurs at close range. Duncan won 5 championships and was the best, foundation of a franchise that I've ever covered. They changed their team around in multiple times. Obviously the 5 championships, they won different ways. They won different styles. But, Dirk's calling card is not just the 1 championship, but 21 years with 1 team, which is a record I don't think anyone's going to break. And the fact that he legitimately changed his position and revolutionize what we expect from a 4-man. I mean, those are things that really make his resume special. And, to me, they kind of add, they're as valuable as rings in assessing kind of his legacy.
So I just want you to piss people off in Miami a little bit more here. Did Dwayne get too many calls in the 06 finals?
It's funny. We were in Miami that night. I mentioned this when I did Simmons' podcast. Like when the Heat came to Dallas in February and Dirk and Wade did the jersey swap, that was really the first time this season that I kind of got emotional watching it. Like, wow, the end is really near. And I wasn't expecting that, but these guys are such a big part of each other's story that, like at the All-Star game, it didn't really hit me, but in that moment, which was right before, like that was really something, just to see the two of them. They checked into the game together, the jersey swap after, like that was weird. But then, so a month later, 6 weeks later, I went to Miami with the Mavs because I wanted to be there for that game as well. And on the court before the game, Cuban was holding court and still talking about the free throw total from 12 years ago. So, not 12, from 13.
13.
Yeah,
Mark, do
years
you know that? Do you know that Cuban? Has Cuban ever told you that he apparently Dwayne hasn't talked to him since, or at least as of 3 years ago? I remember being in Dallas in, I think it was 16, and Cuban was doing the thing you're familiar with, where he's on the treadmill watching CNN and sweating on everybody. And he basically, I asked him about Dwayne, and he said, yeah. He said, I was supposed to do some kind of a photo shoot with Dwayne right after the finals. He didn't talk to me during it. He has not spoken to me since, which is very un-Dwayne-like. But, I mean, that's how under each other's skin they got during that whole situation.
No, I mean, that's what – I mean, I think what made, to see where Dirk and Wade ended up, where, they ended on such cordial terms and friendly terms in the jersey swap. And again, that night in Dallas, I think if I have so little trust in my memory that I'm sure I'm reciting what happened in February correctly. But if I remember it right, Wade went to the scorer's table first. And then so as soon as Wade got there, the Carlisle started screaming for Dirk to get down there. So they had to check into the game together. So just, and then after the game, obviously they were laughing as they exchanged jerseys. Like if you remember 06 and 07, you would have never thought that was possible. I mean, there was the All-Star game that they were both starting in Vegas in 07. They didn't even tap hands in the All-Star game. They didn't even bump fists. So, I mean, it was frosty in that 06, 07 time. And so it made it nice to kind of see where it ended up, because they both, they earned each other's respect, and those were two really, really dramatic finals for the reasons that they both played out. I mean, Miami's comeback in 06 was the first comeback from 2-0 since Portland and Philly in 77, and then for the Mavs to be able to turn around the 11 finals and what happened to LeBron in that finals, if you go back and watch some of those finals games, like, you can't believe you're looking at LeBron James. It's unbelievable.
We'll get back to our episode here in a second, but first, we've had a lot of inquiries about how you can contribute to the 5 Reasons Sports Network, other than just giving us money, which we'll certainly take, or being a podcaster, and I have too many bad ones already. So here's an idea if you want to get involved with us, and it goes beyond our new website, 5reasonsports.com. We are looking for sales representatives. Why? Because we have a lot to sell. We sell ads on our podcasts. We sell ads on social media. We also are selling sponsorships and banner ads on our website. So we got a ton of inventory to sell. We are credentialed with all 5 teams down here. We're fully established, and we just want somebody who can go out into the community and sell that product, sell Miami sports by Miami for Miami to the South Florida community. So if you want to get involved, here's 2 ways that you can contact us. One is by going to Skolnick at 5reasonsports.com, and the other way is going to Jorge, Jorge, at 5reasonsports.com. Reach out one of those 2 ways, and we will get back in touch with you and tell you how you can help and how you can make money.
All right, Mark, I'm actually going to close on a different sport. You are America's most famous Manchester City supporter. I am also a Manchester City supporter, although you've been around much longer. You're not the fraud that I am, joining after they started winning things. Yesterday, as devastating as it gets?
Not as devastating as it gets. I mean, I would say relegations were worse in those. I started following them when I was 11, and then in the 90s, when soccer just started being televised in this country, if it wasn't the Premier League, you couldn't see it. So personally, just speaking for me, relegation in 96, relegation in 98 when they went down to the 3rd division, and knowing that basically I'm not even going to be able to hear these guys on the radio. I mean, those were way, way worse. But yes, it was awful yesterday, and just because it's such an incredible opportunity to know that if you can beat Tottenham at home by 2 goals, you're going to go to a Champions League semifinal against an Ajax team that, again, you'd be heavily favored against. And knowing that the Champions League is the one thing that City hasn't won, it's the one thing that they're desperate to win. I mean, it was bad, and then knowing that every time I'm gonna have to see Steve Nash, he's gonna have over me as North America.
blatantly rooting for them on television too. It was just I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand to watch.
Yeah, but you know what though? But here's the thing. Like this is a big. It's kind of like in modern. We were all as old newspaper people, we were raised, you got to be unbiased. You can never root. But it's like Steve Nash, his Tottenham fandom is so well known. Is he supposed to now go on TV and pretend that he's an objective observer? So I guess I'm fine with the way that they handled it, because it would be worse to try to pretend that he wasn't rooting for them. I don't know how you handle that one. I think things have changed, and like in the modern media world. Like, I'm not saying it's acceptable to we're supposed to be impartial journalists, but if I get thrown into a situation where I have to cover soccer for whatever reason, am I supposed to now pretend that I'm not a City fan? Like, everybody knows that. Like, you can't pretend. I think pretending is worse.
I agree. I think it comes off as fraudulent, but yeah, I mean, it was difficult yesterday to see any Tottenham fans be happy after having a video review determine the outcome of a 2-legged Champions League affair. But maybe we can talk about that another time.
Well, just one last thing on that.
Sure.
I know Ethan really is waiting to hear all this soccer analysis, but I mean,
no, I've been waiting for this the whole pod, guys. Keep going.
The thing is, I mean, City didn't score in the first leg at their place. City missed a penalty. City didn't start De Bruyne. City let in 2 goals at home in the first 10 minutes.
I'm with you, Mark. I'm with you.
Those all factored into the loss too. And I mean, the two video decisions, and that's something that the NBA is wrestling with. Like, tennis is my other favorite sport, and video review in tennis just works so well. But in the NBA and soccer, video review just frustrates the hell out of everyone, and it's time consuming. It just doesn't move well, and it's something that both sports know they need to improve on, but that's easier said than done. So All right, enough soccer. It was bad. It was painful.
Bad. It was bad.
Let's move on.
my only contribution to this conversation is that I actually believe in relegation in the NBA. Like, shouldn't the Phoenix Suns have been relegated 4 years ago? Like, I mean, how many straight years are you allowed to tank, Mark? Like, wouldn't that be a graceful solution?
It's one of the great what ifs. It's one of the great what ifs in sports. What would North American sports look like if we had promotion and relegation? Because I think one of the biggest weaknesses across the board in all of our major team sports is that there are too many games that mean nothing. And the beauty of promotion and relegation is that almost every game means something because everybody is either playing for something at the top or playing for survival at the bottom. But it's impossible. We're never going to see. We don't even have it in American soccer, which is sad because that's really the league where it should start and try to implement it and bring it into our sporting culture. But why? It's never going to happen. No owner is going to sign up for paying even the hundreds of millions that it costs to get an MLS franchise now. They're not going to pay that money and know that they can get relegated. It's just in Europe and all over the world, in England, there are 92 professional soccer teams, but we don't have that same structure. Our minor league teams are owned by the major league teams. So we can talk about it and it would be fun to think that, the Suns or the Knicks are facing relegation, but you need you need real pro teams separately owned underneath them that would have to come in. We can talk about it all day. It's never going to happen, but it would make, just look at baseball. How many games in a baseball season mean nothing? Because there's only this small handful that's really competing at the top.
Mark, we have the Marlins. They haven't scored a run in 6 weeks. We're aware of that. The Marlins should have been relegated years ago. And
it's not only that the games mean nothing, is that teams are incentivized to lose by virtue of the structure of the sport. Yeah. So, you're telling teams that they should be losing. So, that only further adds to teams that are trying to lose in games that have utterly no meaning. But I'd love to have a pro-raw conversation. We can have it a future date, but we don't want to take any more of your time. Marc Stein, again, of the New York Times. Appreciate the time, sir.
Okay, guys. Be good.
Thank you for listening to the Fire Ringer podcast. Thank you so much.